I guess we can begin with the questioning before she joins.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Are the microphones on?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, yes, go ahead.
Thank you all the speakers for this amazing talks. It was very fascinating. I have a more comment for Clarissa. Thank you very much. I'm also working on trousers or Mindanao and Syria, especially clothing.
Oh, great.
And the connection to Central Asia or especially Islamic communities makes a lot of sense. I'm working more on the late 19th, early 20th century, and some visual material that we showed were from this time. And actually, there was a huge connection with the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of Muslim leaders looked for support from the Ottoman Empire, wrote a petition, like 58 Daltas wrote a petition to the Sultan Mehmed V. And this can also be seen in visual or in aesthetic styles such as the fez. Maybe that's a way to explore as well, like the political context of the region. And then, yeah. So the Ottoman Empire was really influential. And then
Absolutely. Thank you. That was great.
And the second comment is on trousers. I have looked a little bit on, especially Tausug women wearing trousers in colonial writings, and it was very, I think that was very remarkable for the U.S. military officials that they've seen women wearing trousers. And there was this very, very sad incident in 1906, the massacre of Butako, where about 1,000 Tausug women, men, and children were killed by U.S. militaries because they were trapped in the crater. They sought refuge in the crater. And the narrative, the discursive colonial narrative that they made as a legitimization to kill women and children was especially because these women have been wearing trousers, pants, as a colonial trope and mechanism, because they have been transgressing gender, and therefore they could be killed because they are not in protection and need of white masculinity. So just that this wearing of trousers is a thing that is very present in the colonial tropes.
Absolutely. That is so wonderful to add to everything, and yes, the Ottoman Empire was and Central Asia were incredibly related, and having that background is really important. And I mean, I should say too, my initial research has been with menswear and European menswear, and also the masculinization of trousers, where trousers, the origin was always for men and women, and then it changed once it moved to Europe, but then it stayed for both sexes when it moved through the East. And so it is incredibly fascinating, and that's a horrifying story, but one that really helps to tell. So we should exchange info.
Just on that, a little follow-up. And then I looked at how, because this is the male gaze looking at women wearing trousers, and I looked at how feminists, like suffragists who started wearing trousers,
it was a tool.
Muslim women.
She's making a statement.
Actually, it's also viewed as something not civilizatory, although women turned to the Orient to wear trousers.
Absolutely.
Appear less masculine.
So, yeah, they called them pajamas, which is from India. Yeah, absolutely. It's been a tool. Yeah. Thank you. That was great. That was so great. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Is one right?
Oh, sorry, yes.
I won't ask a question, but I'll just make a comment and say thank you for both speakers, because they're quite different, even though they're looking at similar issues. This isn't my area, and so I'll sort of pose this as a question for Lesley, but also somebody else here who might also be more of an expert. Because this is something I looked at many years ago, but I'm not doing it now. The sort of migration of motifs. So there's been a lot of discussion about the patola. And so I think it's quite well documented that, the patola with trade in India went to Indonesia. But interestingly, that no one's mentioned, it only hit certain islands. Other islands in Indonesia were influenced, as I recall, from the Dong Song culture, the Bronze Age, that came down to others. So some of the islands who are doing econ in Indonesia, very influenced by Patola, trade with India. Others, Toraja, from what I remember, Borneo, Timor, very different Dong Sung images, because there was a lot of violence in Vietnam, Bronze Age, people moved down, they brought reading technology, and a whole different set of images. So when you look at Indonesian econ, you see two different foreign influences. When you look at Mindanao, Mindanao Warp ecot in Avoca, I see more Dong Sung cultural images than I see Patola. So I don't know if somebody would want to comment on that historical movement, someone who's done research on that. Lesley, you might have run into.
Can I say, the thing with Patola is more in our present remit thinking. Dongsong is too old. People have tried to describe some of the tumpul design that's derived from Dongsong drums.
Right.
And the article I wrote for the Thai Textile Society, I debunked that, and I don't know if Fiona, my colleague here, would agree with me, but nobody has disagreed with me. I think that's just not on. I think the drums came in, but I don't believe that the drums influence the textiles. I think it's too long ago, and things have evolved. We've talked about design, especially from this morning's talk, everything evolved. I mean, Patola was so strong and so fantastic. People loved that fine silk that they couldn't make. It was like heaven. And so they just took it and these motifs and replicated right through to the eastern islands of Indonesia. So personally, I don't go with the Dongsong theory. Maybe something, but for me, I don't see that as derived in those textiles. Patola, yes, everywhere, of course.
Because the designs are quite different.
Yeah, yes.
Patola derived, and then when you look at Toraja, Timor, it's not my area. I'm an anthropologist. So that I just throw that out there as a good
Yeah.
discussion item for future research.
Is somebody going to be able to tell me about the making of the malong, and that the blanket strips were made at a separate time to the rest of the textile? Does anyone have an answer to that?
I have some idea. Usually the lumpy comes from a very small loom, and then the fabric is attached to it to create that pattern. But as to why, I'm not really sure.
And would it be the same person, the same weaver, creates both?
No.
No?
It could be a different weaver for the lumpy, the smaller one, and then the fabric is separate. So they attach it to create a huge fabric to cover the body, of course.
And then the patola, the andon, doesn't have the blanket strips on it.
No, the blanket is pretty much separate to the completely woven fabric.
Yeah.
So these are made by a different set of people with
Okay.
access to bigger looms. So it's a very different technique. So
Yeah.
two different groups of people.
And I'd just like to add to that, because in obviously post-20th century, late 20th century malongs with the lampkit, they tend to be commercial cotton. You know, so
Okay.
So it's not something that the weaver just does the strips, which of course they're so beautiful, right? And as you say, with a little loom.
Yeah.
But it's, basically they buy the cloth and then they attach.
So that's how it's developed now.
That's more 20th century, late 20th century, as I understand.
Okay, thank you.
In our collection, we have a few malong, but we have many langkets separated
Oh, okay.
from the langkon. Many langket, and we would have them sometimes in pairs and groupings, so that you have the horizontal bands that match, and then the wide band that is separated. So clearly, it's something so precious, kind of like the shells and some of the blouses that are used. Where it's removed, and then once the it's removed and then added. I think if that makes sense, maybe.
I think
I mean, they're different regions, but
that one is a different
yes.
technique for the fabric. I think they not just use it on the clothes, but also as part of decor in the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're from how I understand it, they got those materials from trade.
Mhm.
They don't make it on their own. And the skill and embroidery and embellishment is something that they they applied on the cloth. So they piece together like separate materials, but then they also originate in terms of embroidery and also in weave. So it's a combination of many things really of what they get. So I think I have a weaver friend who's Maranao, who's actually might be able to tell you better.
I would like to know about the dyes. When all my research, nobody talks about the color, the dyeing them. Were the natural dyes ever used?
I've not encountered for the Mindanao if they actually dyed their fabric. They got it from trade, the silk.
Pre-dyed already?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's from based on the conversation. So there's no
Yeah.
reference for this. So
Okay, thank you.
it's later.
Okay.
I'm unsure if Miss Nina Capistrano-Baker is joining us. Is she joining? She is? Okay.
She's in the US, so let's
Okay.
set give her 2 minutes.
Okay.
I called her.
Just continuing about the Malong, there is a fantastic contemporary Maranao fashion designer that I was introduced to through Mark Higgins, named Abdul Ghaffar. And his beautiful, he has a version of it made into a dress that was on the cover of Vogue Philippines.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's been great to talk to.
She's my contemporary.
Hello.
Yeah, oh, great. Yes. Hi, Nina.
Good morning.
Hi, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Or good afternoon.
Hi, so we're just in the question stage after the presentation. So we already began questioning, but if anyone has a question. Yes, go ahead.
A question, something to do with Petra, or in general, double ikat. Maybe also the question to Marian. When we talk about double ikat, we always talk about Petra and also Tenganan. But when you look at Tenganan, they use the back strap,
Petra?
circular work, and no reed, which is represent the old layer of Austronesian culture, I think. And when we look at the ikat, ikat of the area using such loom, always what they do is the warp ikat for technical reason, I think. And Tenganan is quite exceptional in a sense, not just because of the double ikat, but they incorporate the weft ikat. And I wonder if there's any case doing the weft ikat in the world of back strap, circular work with a reed in this region, besides Tenganan.
I'll let you know when I find out.
I would answer that. I've done a lot of research on Balinese textiles. The weft ikat in cotton is done on a textile called chapuk, which is a ceremonial textile. It's not worn. It's used for to wrap the rangda, who is the witch alter ego of the barong in ceremonies, and rites of passage ceremony. But so chapuk is a weft ikat design. The pattern goes across this way, and it's always in cotton. It's the only place in Indonesia where you have weft ikat in cotton is chapuk.
And they use the back strap with a reed?
No. No, they're on a fixed brace loom doing that. So it's wide.
But if you use the back strap, the circular, without reed, there's a good reason why they just work on warp ikat, because it's going to be
Smaller.
You can get the pattern of weft.
No.
It's so close in
Yeah.
case of no reed. But the Tenganan was really exceptional. By handwork, they materialized this both thing. So I always wonder if there's any other case like that.
I'd like to add something, the use of the reed. A very great scholar who died a few years ago, Jan Weisman Christie. I don't any of you have come across her. She wrote her research on the Javanese SEMA tax transfer charters. She translated them all. And when I did my first research, there is reference to the use of the reed. And when I learnt that the use of a reed, you need to do any form of supplementary, you need a reed to split the loom so that you can put some over heddle sticks. So we know about the reed way back in the sort of 10th, 11th century, and that the Javanese were trading brocade to China. And the only way you can make brocade is you need a reed. And we know that the reed was at that time, usually something about this wide, the ones in Indonesia. Now in Java, they don't do that anymore. That's all completely disappeared. But in Tenganan, they don't use the reed for anything. It's body tension loom, and it's no wider than about this, and they just sew the panels together to get the larger ones.
And it's also a circular warp.
Yes, circular warp.
Yeah, it's not a flat warp.
No, it's circular warp, but always body tension.
It's not possible to put a reed.
No.
I think in Mindanao, Mandaya has a kind of loop. Yeah, I think.
And then the Pagopo have a reed-like comb.
Okay.
It's not like, but the Mandaya reed is more like the
Correct.
song.
But Mandaya, they do the weft ikat? No, right? So it's a very, very unique case in case Mandaya, I think, in a sense. Because there's no other place like that in Mindanao, I think.
They're very different in
Right.
interesting ways to the other Mindanao.
Do we have a question for Nina? Can you hear us, Nina?
Yes, I can hear you.
I think Lesley had a question.
Yes, well, I don't think you heard it earlier. I debunked your saying that tumpul came from India, so I wondered if you'd like to talk about it.
I'm sorry I didn't hear your talk, but if that is a statement that needs to be challenged, then I would love to hear about it.
Well, I'm afraid I challenged you. So.
I'm repeating a frequently cited statement that the tumpal from that's found in Southeast Asia probably derives from the Indian trade cloths. But I'm not saying that tumpal or the triangular motif originated in India. It could well have originated elsewhere and migrated to India, and from India to Southeast Asia. As you'll note in my talk, I touched on the original sources that go beyond India, such as West Asia and Western Central Asia, both influenced the material culture, the visual culture of India. But I'm stopping at India because that's the region I'm more familiar with. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, it's just that the tumpul tradition doesn't appear in Indian textiles per se. When we see trade cloths, and I talked about that briefly yesterday when I was there, when you something called the kain sembagi, which was traded so much to Sumatra with huge tumpul, I mean this long, very narrow and very pointed. And all of this was required from Java, from Sumatra. They were the people who sent traders over to India and said, right, guys, this is what we want. Make it this way. And the Indians did.
Fascinating.
The Indians were great. They said, we'll do whatever you want. We'll make what you want. And that's why the Thai textiles, you don't see any Indian cotton textiles that you see in Sumatra, in Thailand, completely different, because the Thai sent their own patterns off and made their own requirements. And I think that's really important as scholars to understand. The Indonesians were the ones, the Thais, the Malays, they had their own ideas. They knew what they wanted, and the Indians were just the makers, because nobody else could do it.
Are you saying then that who commissioned the tumpal according to your research?
As far as we can work out, that the Javanese did, or the Sumatrans.
Okay.
Yeah, let's say the Indonesians of the time, yeah.
Right, because they were quite a dominant culture in
Yes.
Indonesia at the time. So are you saying then that the triangular motif that spread all over Southeast Asia originated from Java, or...
Dr. Fiona Kerlog is going to say something. Fiona, please speak loudly so she can hear.
Yeah, you might need to come up, actually, because the microphones. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're going to have someone speak with you.
But this is great, so we can...
Turn that one on.
Let's see. Push.
No, leave it.
There you go.
Use that
Here,
one.
here you go.
Can I have a request? Can you pull the mic closer to yourself? And then I have a hearing problem because I work in metal shops. If you have a conversation that's not actively part of the talk, can you just... I can't hear both.
You can mute it as well.
Okay. Fiona, please go ahead.
Right, I was only going to say a tiny thing, and that is that the evidence that we have that these cloths with triangles on them were made for the Southeast Asian market rather than existing in India is because of the size of the textiles. So these textiles are kind of sarung size or selendang size, sambagi size, to use the local term. And you don't find that in saris. You find them in Southeast Asian size textiles. Yeah.
Because also saris would be using a totally different technology, right? They would be silk with, I think, I'm not a sari expert, but when I think of sari material, I think of more floral, more curvilinear motifs rather than geometric.
Well, the sari is made in a multitude. It depends where it comes from. And the Indian sari, as we all know it today, is relatively new. The Indian women did not wear a sari of old. So as Fiona said, these cloths were huge. They were designed for a specific market to use as ceremonial wear. The Indonesians in Sumatra, they didn't wear them. It was all ceremonial. They kept them as pusaka or adat. It was part of that tradition. So they had no use in India at all, absolutely none. The Indians made their textiles to be worn. The stuff that came to Indonesia especially was for something else other than wearing, or they then cut it up and made it into trousers when it came to Chinde.
Well, that makes sense. It's sort of like the Chinese export pottery that were dictated by, for example, the Japanese would want more celadon, or another community might want the blue and whites.
Yes.
But it's not really used in China itself because they use a higher quality type of ceramics in China. So that would be equivalent. Is there a new publication that I should be aware of that discusses these things?
Oh, Miss Nina, we have someone speaking.
Oh.
You could repeat it. Maddie Bell Gittinger's Master Dyers to the World. Maddie Bell Gittinger documented this in probably 1990 as her book. It's what Lesley was saying. Master Dyers to the World, the Indian artisans made particular styles for the different countries in Southeast Asia. They ordered it just like the Europeans ordered it in India.
All right.
So
But the tumpal in particular, that is
reference to this. Yeah, Master Dyers to the World. I hope that helps.
Master Dyers.
Yes, I'm familiar with that book. It's an old publication.
Yeah, but she's,
I did, you missed it earlier, I wrote an article for the Thai Textile Society on the derivation of the tumpal, which just was published earlier this year.
I'm sorry I missed that.
So it's out on academia. I have a page on academia. You can find my article there.
Fabulous. And I can anticipate that a lot of forthcoming papers in the next few days will have to adjust their wording from using tumpal. I have had the privilege of previewing some of the forthcoming papers, and this is a very important correction. Thank you very much, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong among my Filipino colleagues, but this is something that we kind of routinely say, that, tumpal is from India. So I would be very interested in reading your paper. Thank you.
Miss Maria.
Last word from Marianne. No, not last word, but we don't have time. We need to get coffee.
Yes. Oh, yeah,
I am not I'm not contesting any of the positions that have been taken, but I do want, I wish for a greater appreciation for the triangle and the rhomb as very old, as actually archaic in island Southeast Asia in terms of investments of meaning.
You're absolutely right, and I'll finish off by saying the Dongsong drum, and I put it in my article on the tumpul, has these tiny little triangles, and it's a rom. It's not the tumpul motif. So when people of old said, oh, Dongsong drums and the tumpul, absolutely not. Even on some Javanese textiles, they have these tiny little triangles. That is not a tumpul. It's not. It's a big subject because it's hugely important to textiles of this region. Anyhow, we need to break. Thank you.
Oh, if my last word, I think you noticed in my talk that I did say that motifs travel from geography to geography, and they acquire different names and different meanings. So my use of tumpal really is just for convenience, that I assume that's how the triangular motif was known in Indian trade textiles. But as you'll notice, puchuk rabong is triangular, and then paku rabong is also triangular, alluding to two different plants, Maranao and Maguindanao, the fern tendril and the bamboo shoot, but it's the same motif, it's the same idea of the triangle. So that was really the main point, that these forms travel from one geography to another. They're assigned different meanings. Their meanings change, and most especially the terminology changes, because can have the same image with a different name, even within Minangkabao itself, among the different villages. And certainly by the time that the motifs travel to elsewhere, specifically to the Philippines, they have acquired different meanings and different names. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll have a break for coffee. Thank you very much.